Fans of professional wrestling, welcome to a trip through the territories here on a Thursday night, being broadcast on Ring Respect Radio. And as always, boom, just like that, it's Thursday night, and that means it's time to party with us. We're the Video Bros. I'm Bobby Munson, the man sitting beside me. He's the man with the angelic voice. He's Papa Smokes. Papa Smokes, happy Thursday. How you doing, brother?
Oh, it's Thursday again, Munson, and I'm doing great. Glad to be here on Ole Podcast for Ring Respect Radio, and especially on this occasion, it's another trip through the territories. My favorite opportunity to get down with some old school territory wrestling.
And this one's going to be a fun one, Papa Smokes. You and I have been chatting back and forth all week long, talking about this before we even went live. We're going to Knoxville today. We're going to be talking about the Fuller family. It's going to be in a little different vein, though, before I go to the chat, just to have a heads up. Where we provide a lot of content, where we go through every little detail that we can find, that we scour in our research for these territories. This one, I say, is going to be a little bit different, because if you want that full out detail, every little thing that ever happened in this particular territory during the specific times, then I have to recommend Ron Fuller's Studcast that you can find on YouTube if you're interested in checking it out. Ron Fuller does an amazing job of telling this story about this territory in depth, and everybody should check it out. Highly recommend it. And that's where a lot of our conversation is going to come from tonight. We will get to that. Stick around. First, we're going to go over to our chat. We're going to say hello to Zach Minger, who's joined us in the house. Thank you for dropping in, Zach. Leaving a comment as per usual. It's our main man. Well, once it actually, sorry, I got to press the button first. It's Basser. He's up in the house. Thank you for being here, Basser. Yeah. Cheers to you on a Thursday night. As always, joining us in the house, it's the Mangler, your favorite show. Well, thank you. Glad that we can provide that level of entertainment to you on a Thursday night, Mangler. And, of course, our good friend, it's Melball Collins, the host of Noah Unleashed in Strong Style Fashion here on the channel. Love having you all here. It's Thursday night. You know, we're going to be talking about this territory. Before we do, Papa Smokes, it's been raining today, I've noticed. And, you know, there's these things that they put out this time of year when the temperature rises and it dips and all these things happen. I think they call it a storm warning, or in this case, a cheap plug for Prairie Pro Wrestling presents Storm Warning coming Saturday, June 27th, 2026 at the Cosmos Senior Center. Check out Prairie Pro Wrestling over on our social media, where you can reach out to us to get your reserved seating. And they are flying, Pop Smokes. I'm telling you, we are going to sell that damn place out. It's going to be the hottest ticket in Saskatoon, as per usual. Anyone is going to be there. Can't wait for Saturday, June the 27th.
Oh, I can't wait 2 months. What a great time of the year for a show at the end of June. It's not super swelteringly hot yet, but finally it's nice. After all the shows throughout the winter, the fans just being such troopers, showing up in the cold, waiting outside, bundled up, toots, scarves, all the rest of that winter wear. And you got to find somewhere to put it down and find a space for your jacket. Nah, don't worry about it. It's June 27th, a Saturday night. You can come in your shorts, your t-shirt. You don't got to worry about anything. Worry about getting a beer, a White Claw, some other kind of refreshment, and sit down and enjoy the PPW local wrestling action.
And not only that, get merch from your favorite professional wrestlers on hand that night. There's going to be a great show. I can promise you that much. So make sure that you got your tickets. And speaking of wrestlers that come from here, Papa Smokes, I want to give a quick shout out to two people that we're familiar with. First of all, on the wrestling side, Mr. Riley Cruz, and on the other side, our good friend Blair Pacheco from Grainmaker Wrestling Podcast, as well as WPW. Just today, his interview with Riley Cruz dropped over on his channel, so I want you guys to go and show some love and support. Check out Grainmaker Wrestling Podcast over on YouTube. Check out the latest interview with Riley Cruz, talking all about his career, all about Prairie Pro Wrestling, all the good stuff. I can't wait to check it out. I haven't got to it yet. I will get to it no later than tomorrow. Very excited for this one, Papa Smokes. I know you're looking to check it out as soon as possible as well, too.
For sure. And I've listened to a number of Grainmaker podcasts over the years. Blair's a great podcaster, an excellent interviewer, and his podcast has got to be among the bigger ones in Western Canada covering wrestling content. He's had a number of big names and a number of up-and-coming names on his show. Riley Cruz, just another one of those up and coming names that's going to be one of the big wrestling stars in Western Canada. So check it out. Hear Riley Cruz on the Grainmaker podcast. See what his plans are for the future. His future looking very, very bright.
Yeah, and of course he's currently down in Texas working with Reality of Wrestling. Another huge opportunity for Riley Cruz, man. This guy's he's escalating that career very rapidly for himself, and just proof of what the Prairie Pro Wrestling Academy can offer you if you want to be a pro wrestler. Again, if you're in our area and you want to become a professional wrestler, I mean, yeah, it's a cheap plug, sure, because we work for the company and we're part of the company, but we also have seen the progress that people have made there. The Prairie Pro Wrestling Academy is top-notch, great people, hard workers, and they're going to show you all the fundamentals you need in order to get into the business properly, and that's being seen with Riley Cruz, with Morris Waltz, with Soup Nasty, and the next batch of wrestlers that you will see inside that ring as well, too. We saw Rico Sparks debuting at the SaskTel Center there at WrestleMania. You just never know who from the academy is going to come forward next, and it's an awesome experience.
Very much so, and the BPW Training Academy has done a great job. It's a legitimate wrestling school. You get good training there. It's not someone trying to make money out of it. It's someone trying to get people into the business to achieve their dreams, to work on getting there as a wrestler. And yeah, like you said, we've got a new crop of students that are just about ready to come up into having matches in front of a crowd. So PPW fans, get ready for that. You're going to be seeing some new talent soon.
Yep, it's going to happen sooner rather than later. Can't wait for it. No, even those ones that have been working very hard towards it are very excited for their opportunity. And, those opportunities, Pop Smokes, come about because there is a glorious history behind professional wrestling, one that predates what most people usually talk about in this day and age. And that's why collectively you've joined us here on tonight's Ring Respect Radio for a trip through the territories. Now let's get into our main subject. We're talking about the history of Southeastern Championship Wrestling as run by the Fullers, or in particular Ron Fuller, and talking heavily about the Studcast, Pop Smokes. The Studcast was something that you put me onto, and I kind of did a bit of a combination of going and finding some of the old tapes as per usual, watching some of the matches from what I could. You have to be careful because not everything is Southeastern, and because they kind of run a very similar kind of territory to some of the others. So I kind of did that for some of my studying, and as well as kind of going online and doing a little research as well too. So it'll be a little different. I think we're going to have a little bit of a chat about Ron Fuller and how he ran this company in particular. But as always, I'm sure you've got a little bit of a lay of the land when it comes to Knoxville and this particular territory, Pop Smoke. So I want to turn it over to you, my friend. Let the people know a little bit more.
Absolutely, Bob. And as Ron Fuller would say, saddle up. Let's get ready for a ride with the stud. So anyway, we're going to be talking about Knoxville, Tennessee, in the East Tennessee area. Knoxville, Tennessee, found on the Tennessee River and bordering the Appalachian Mountains. Population, 190,000 people. In the metropolitan area, somewhat larger than that, somewhere closer to 1 million people. Knoxville, Tennessee is the gateway to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. As a little personal aside note here, Munson, you talk about places that a person would like to go in the U.S. There's many sights to see, many beautiful places to see, such as the Grand Canyon and many, many other areas. For me personally, the Smoky Mountains would be really at the top of my list, I think. Even beyond Yellowstone Park and the Grand Canyon, the Smoky Mountain National Park has the most visitors and vacationers of any national park in the U.S. every year. So very, very popular, very beautiful there. Lots of camping opportunities. Also a place to be respected. Many people have gone missing in the Smoky Mountain National Park. So it's very large. It's very primordial. There's not a lot of roads and trails and stuff in it. It's been an area that's been kept pristine all the time that the United States has been a nation. They've protected the Smokies. So what a wonderful area. Now, the
Uh,
Cherokee had been the dominant tribe in the region in early history. European settlers arrived by the 1780s. During the Civil War, the Knoxville area and the city of Knoxville was ravaged by fighting during the Civil War, but by the 1880s, it was being rebuilt already. And by the 1960s, we've got interstate highways coming there. So this will be an important point for when we start talking about the wrestling business in Tennessee and East Tennessee. The arrival of interstate highways will make travel so much easier for the wrestlers going to and from different cities, different territories, and different spot shows.
yeah, it's one of the best like kind of areas in general kind of thing in terms of the travel and stuff like that for working within certain promotions and a lot of the trading of the talent. We'll get to that in a second. We say hello to Blair from Grainmaker Wrestling Podcast. Blair, we were giving you a show earlier in the show there about your newest podcast, the interview with Riley Cruz. If you do me a favor, pop the link right in our chat right now. I'd love to pop it up on the screen and share that with everybody here tonight so they go and check it out and check out that great interview with Riley Cruz. We both have to check it out still. We will. That is a promise. We love your show and much respect to you, Blair. But yeah, like the travel you mentioned, Papa Smokes, this was one of the nice things about the area. And because when they started Southeastern up, Ron talks very heavily about the need for talent and the talent that he just didn't have there all at one time. So that's where he kind of made that connection with Jerry Jarrett in particular, not only working with Jerry as a wrestler for him, but also being able to trade talent back using people like Jerry the King Lawler and people that Jerry Jarrett had over in his territory that could then come work for Ron Fuller and Southeastern.
Yeah, very much so. And when we get to talk about this Knoxville and East Tennessee area, we're going to find that it had been run as a wrestling territory from 1954 to 1974 by Roy Welch. Now, we brought up Roy Welch many times on this podcast before. Not so many modern fans are aware of who Roy Welch is or what his legacy is in the professional wrestling business, but it can't be overstated. It's completely massive. He is the great grandpappy, so to speak, of Southern wrestling. You talk about families like the McMahons being huge wrestling promoters. Roy Welch was a massive wrestling promoter. He was not running 12 cities. He was running 12 states with multiple cities in each state, driving up and down the highways in his Cadillac. We talked before, he was one of the first people that anyone had heard of having a cellular phone in his car. There was some, I don't know how it worked exactly, but there was a huge box contraption of some sort that was in the trunk of the car, and he had a handpiece like an old dialing phone that was wired into this box, and he could make his phone calls while he was driving because, of course, every wrestling promoter knows that 85% of the job is done on the phone, making contacts, making connections, setting up deals. But anyway, Roy Welch had been a real tough guy in the old days, in the 20s and 30s and such. He was from a different breed of people, like the settlers that had come to America. He was tough, very, very tough. Working on the oil fields in Texas, he became acquainted with Dutch Mantell, the old shooter. Now, I'm not talking about Dutch Mantell, the more modern version that was on WCW and was Jack Swagger's manager in WWE. Not that guy. He's also a good wrestler, but Dutch Mantell, the original, was from the 20s, and he was a shoot fighter and involved with the worked wrestling business as well, but more known as a shoot fighter. Look up a picture of original Dutch Mantell sometime. He looks like a wrestler, but also like someone out of a horror movie. He looks like somebody from The Hills Have Eyes. He's scarred. He's got the cauliflower ears. His nose and eye sockets and jaw have been broken so many times. He looks like a horror movie monster in a way. So you know this guy's legit. He was the instructor in fighting of Roy Welch, and Welch came up as a tough guy through the oil fields. The guys were betting on shoot fights on, just on after work and on Saturday nights and stuff, having drinks and fighting each other for money. Roy Welch was the king of this. Not a huge man or anything like that, but well trained and tough as nails. And Roy Welch ran his wrestling empire the same way that he ran his fights. Absolutely no bullshit whatsoever, no nonsense, and taking no excuses ever. Roy Welch was the kind of guy that would drive into a town, see that there was another wrestling show going on, walk into the building, walk into the dressing room, and say, "All right, you guys are done here as a company. You guys work for me now. Anyone that doesn't want to, you can walk out right now. Anyone that's got a problem with it, come right, get up right in my face, and we'll talk about it. And I'm going to show you why you don't have a problem with me anymore." And no one ever, probably a few guys stepped up to him. If anyone did step up to him, Roy might hire that guy as a wrestler, knowing that he had some guts and was tough. But other than that, he would take over promotions by force. He also ran his promotions with an iron fist. No monkey business going on. And in a time where there were more legitimate fights in the ring sometimes between hookers and shooters and real fighters at the time, no one crossed Roy Welch. He was just that tough. And that's how he set up such a huge network all through the South, through all those states: Ohio, Kentucky, uh, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, and so on and so on. 12 states down there he was running. Can you believe that, Munson? Can you imagine how much you see how much one local promoter works to put on shows bi-monthly? This is a guy running 12 states who have shows every week, spot shows every week in other towns, TV in some towns, and all the rest of that. Can you imagine what a monumental task that was?
Oh, I wouldn't want to put myself in his shoes ever. That's for damn sure. And yeah, you talk about Roy and his ownership and everything like that. But when Ron took over, it's said that Southeastern, that territory in particular, wasn't the moneymaker at the time, kind of thing. In fact, they were in a deficit, if I'm not mistaken, when Ron took over. And at the time, Ron, I believe, was 26 when he took over Southeastern. He was the youngest possibly booker that ever existed. Like, so it was hard for some people to understand that at 26 years old, this guy was not only at the company, but he was 26 and he was the owner of the company. He was the promoter of the company, in his own words, saying that was well beyond his years, because at 26 years old, you weren't even looked at somebody who was really in the age bracket to be competing up against the world's champion or anything like that. But Ron was now in a top position, not only because of his ring work, but because of how he was running business behind the scenes.
For sure. And let's not mince words here. Ron was notable as a wrestler partly because of his familial ties, pardon me, being the grandson of Roy Welch and the son of Buddy Fuller, another famous wrestler. The Welch family is the biggest family in pro wrestling history. They've got cousins, uncles, sons, brothers, sisters. So many people in that family, an extended family, were wrestlers, promoters, bookers, referees. Every job you can think of in the wrestling business had Welches and Fullers. Fuller was eventually the working name for Welch's. Their last name, many of those was Welch, but they used Fuller as a working name in the business. Um, yeah, and Ron wanted to buy his own company. He looked to East Tennessee and ended up buying the company from John Kazana, who had been running the company after his brother, who had run it for 20, 30 years before that. But like you say, it wasn't bringing in money at this time. East Tennessee wrestling was dead by the early 70s, and there's a reason for that. It had been dead, cold as a fish, for 20 years before that. for a very interesting and specific reason. 20 years before, and even before that, the top babyface in East Tennessee had been a wrestler named Whitey Caldwell. And Whitey Caldwell is not a name that a lot of wrestling fans remember, but wrestling fans from that time would certainly remember him in that area because he was so popular and so tremendously over that he was carrying the whole performance part of the wrestling business on his back in East Tennessee for a long, long time. But what happened was Whitey Caldwell tragically was killed in a car accident when he was still a young man in his early 30s. And he was driving in between shows, and some of those mountainous, snaking kind of highways late at night, was involved in an accident and was killed. And the death of Whitey Caldwell killed the whole East Tennessee territory for damn near 20 years. Isn't that crazy that that one wrestler could have such an effect like that? Everybody agrees that it wasn't any other causes for that territory going cold, but it was Whitey Caldwell's death that really, really brought it to a standstill.
And I mean, you can make the argument that that's always the problem with having one person that you rely so heavily on that when you don't have them anymore, you don't have a backup plan. And that seemingly was the case because Ron comes in and he didn't immediately turn things around. I mean, you listen to the stories about the build and the business that he did, and he attributes a lot of what he did to what he saw his father doing before him. And he said that his father was really good at advertising. He would go out and there would be posters and there would be him talking to people and make sure that that there is a wrestling show in town. These guys are going to be on the card. This is what we're doing, making it a big deal. And Ron adopted that philosophy. And even when he started doing, like when you hear him talk about the Coliseum shows, you hear him talk about how he didn't just go out postering. He actually took out billboard space because he wanted this to be that big of a deal, because it was that big of a deal. I mean, this is where you get that opportunity with the NWA's heavyweight champion. This was when they were going to be sending in Jack Briscoe for a fight at the Coliseum here. And Ron's here in this position with a new company trying to get it out there, trying to build it, but he's also lacking in necessarily having the talent to go there. And he talks about the story about having to do a one-night tournament to get the right guy for the job to be able to fight Jack Briscoe 10 days before this time frame. And he really liked his wrestlers. That was one thing. There was a spot for the big guys. There was a spot for the brawlers. But what he really liked was his true to form pro wrestlers that could put on a strong wrestling match. And there was a heavy focus put onto those particular wrestlers, especially when it was what he was looking for to go after a match with Jack Briscoe.
For sure. You bring up a good point. And don't forget that Ron Fuller's basically restarting a brand new wrestling company, even though he bought the company from John Kazana, but he's basically restarting pro wrestling in East Tennessee and in the Knoxville area from that dead zone after Whitey Caldwell's death. He doesn't have a huge fan base that is just going to come over to his company. He's got to recruit basically all new fans to a brand new company under the ghost of Whitey Caldwell. And so he's got double duty to do here. He's really going to have to work hard. Now, Fuller bought the company from Kazana for $150,000, which doesn't sound like so much today, but in 1974 or 75, that's quite a lot more money. Now, some of the other promoters that he knew, including his grandpa, Roy Welch, his dad, Buddy Fuller, and of course, Ron Fuller had made his name in Florida by this time under the great Eddie Graham. So he had some pretty heavyweight promoters that he was friends with. Those guys all told him, "Kid, you paid way too much for this. What are you doing? Like, you made a bad deal. 150 grand is way too much for a promotion that's pretty much dead. There's no fan base. You don't have a good TV deal. You don't have anything in place yet. You're going to have to set all this up. and you're vastly overpaying for this territory. Not only that, one of Fuller's big problems when he bought this company and started it up, was that he didn't realize some details that he was agreeing to when he bought this company. One of the major ones is that the Knoxville territory didn't have that many homegrown stars, so he was going to have to share talent and import talent from the Memphis area, which was being run by his grandfather, Roy Welch, and Jerry Jarrett. But that's that's the key right there, is that in order to get that talent from Memphis, he would have to pay a 10% booking fee for each show that he ran in order to get that talent. Now, 10% might not sound like a lot, but when you take 10% off the top of whatever money you make from that show, it's leaving a much smaller pie for the owner at the end of the day. And Ron Fuller found that starting this company up was going to be a huge challenge financially as well as in other business senses. And this was one of the problems that he had, was he didn't think he was ever going to survive paying a 10% booking fee to Memphis every time. So Ron was in the enviable position that his grandfather was one of the co-owners of the Memphis territory. So Ron knows what a hard man that his grandfather is, Roy Welch, but approaches him and says, Grandpa, I don't know if I can do this with this booking fee intact. These are my expenses. This is what I'm making. Kind of outlined it to him. Sat down with his grandpa. Admits he was scared. Like, his grandpa is not somebody to be trifled with in a business sense, even if you're his grandson. So there was real fear going into this meeting. But he appealed to his grandfather and said, I can't do it with this fee. You got to drop this fee for me, at least for a while. So, probably due to the familial ties, Roy Welch said, All right, I'm going to cut you a break, grandson. I'll cut you a break. You don't have to pay the 10% booking fee anymore, but we're not going to supply your wrestlers anymore. It doesn't come easy, kid. I'm not just laying out the red carpet for you. You want one problem gotten rid of, you've got another one now. Don't come to me for your wrestlers. You got to find your top talent somewhere else. So Ron basically traded one major problem for another, and this was going to be a huge challenge for him to be able to find quality talent who would come in at the prices he could pay. Man, that's just, which one would be worse, right? 10% booking or trying to find all new talent? Well,
Yeah.
Ron was in that boat now. He's got to find top talent and bring him into Knoxville.
You bet, yeah. This is a great question here coming in from Blair. Any books you guys would recommend on the territory? I'm going to go over to you for this, Pop Smokes. I don't know about this particular territory, but maybe some of the territories in general, the stuff you've read.
Yeah, there are some good books. I'm not sure. I know that John Cosper has a couple of books about Southern wrestling. I'm not sure if it's about Southeastern particularly. I don't know that there is a book on this particular territory or promotion, but I know that there are a few good ones that go back to that. I'm having a little bit of trouble thinking of exact uh, titles right now, but look up John Cosper. He's uh, known pretty widely as being a huge historian for Southern wrestling.
There you go. And also, Blair, we mentioned at the top of the podcast as well, too. You can check out the Studcast podcast. You can find it on YouTube. It is presented by Ron Fuller himself, and he goes into full depth of the territory, the people in the territory, all these stories. Everything that we're saying here, a lot of that is coming directly from Ron Fuller and the Studcast itself, too, where we did a lot of the research. But he's a very interesting guy. Like, a very big risk taker in a sense, though, too, Bob. So you talk about like those money risks, spending too much, being told that he'd have to pay 10% or not get the talent and all these things that he had to do. Yet he's a very humble man at the same time. Like, you listen to him tell the stories and, talk about the guys like who would give him decent notice if they were moving on, or guys that would just bail on him, in a short period of time. He says he never got mad about it because he always was on the understanding if you could go make this a life for yourself somewhere else where they can pay you the big money, they can, give you the things that he couldn't necessarily give you in Southeastern, move on and do your thing. Like he was happy to let people, he didn't want to hold people back necessarily that didn't want to be there working for him. So everybody who worked in Southeastern Wrestling wanted to be there in the first place.
For sure, for sure. There were other challenges for Fuller when he bought this company. He was really getting in over his head at age 26 there, and hadn't really considered everything that he might have to do and change about this ice cold wrestling company that he had purchased in East Tennessee. Now, another one of the problems that Ron had to face was his TV. Now, John Kazana had a TV show uh, broadcast in the Knoxville area. This is, of course, before the internet days. Your TV could be seen as far as the TV station's signal would reach geographically, right?
Yeah.
And this particular TV station had, out of the three in Knoxville, had the shortest range. So it only went 30 miles out of town or something. So that's barely any other small towns which you would hope to reach, which you would hope to open up for spot shows in the future for expansion. They're not going to get your TV out there, any of the surrounding area. So the TV station was going to be a problem. He wanted wider viewership than what the TV station could give. Now, another problem he had with his TV was the announcer that came along from John Kazana's promotion before that was a guy named Big Jim Hess. Now, Big Jim Hess was an employee of the aforementioned TV station. He was a big salesman down there. He was a big wig at the TV station. So he was in there good. He was a valued employee of that station, and he did wrestling commentary as his job. So he was going to be handed over to Ron Fuller. The TV station was quite invested in having Hess continue as the announcer there. However, once Ron Fuller watched full shows of Jim Hess's announcing, he was thrown into fits because Hess was clearly didn't understand the wrestling business or the promotional side of what a commentator should be. Hess was arrogant. He was trying to get himself over all the time. He was trying to pump himself up as a tough guy that might be able to hang with some of the wrestlers and even beat up and defeat some of the wrestlers. It was just appalling to Roy Welch, or pardon me, to Ron Fuller, and he was just at a loss, thinking, "What am I going to do? I have to get rid of this guy. Not only is he not a boost to my company in terms of promotion, selling the wrestlers, selling the product, but he's a detriment because he makes it sound like a joke. He makes wrestling sound like a carnival sideshow, and he's trying to get himself over as one of the big characters, which is absolutely not what you want from your commentators on your TV show. So now Ron's got a big problem. Not only is his TV station not suitable for his needs, he's got an entrenched commentator that works for that TV station that ain't going to get fired anytime soon. Ron can't fire him because he can't fire him from the TV station, and he will probably lose his TV deal if he tries to. But he's got to get rid of Hess as his announcer. Another big problem that he faced.
And did he not, like, again, didn't Hess eventually, or at least from Ron's own mouth, eventually cost Ron his TV deal in particular? That was what held him back at one time, or that's what Ron says happened, was Hess, or he believes Hess was responsible for nuking one of the deals for Southeastern.
Yeah, I think so. And the way this story went was that Fuller had one of the other wrestlers, Les Thatcher, take him up to the TV station. He wanted to see it. He wanted to see where they would be filming and what the station was like, and have some familiarity with it. Now, this TV station was located on a place called Razor Ridge, which is kind of in the foothills to the Appalachians. So they put the TV station up high on a small mountain so that its signal could be broadcast a bit further, even though this particular station's signal didn't go all that far. But Ron quickly comes to realize up at the top of Razor Ridge, it's a very harrowing drive to get up there. It's very, very steep. It's difficult to drive up there. It's not super duper far to walk, but again, very treacherous. And then it snows in the winter, so fans can't really get up there. Ron asked some of the people at the TV station, well, how do the fans get up here in winter? And the answer was they don't in very great amounts whatsoever. So even his TV studio audience, which would be small in the sound stage, even that he couldn't fill up because this station was in such a treacherous position up on Razor's Ridge that the fans couldn't even really get to it very properly. So we know at a taping that the fans and the crowd are very important in bringing the energy to the in-ring product. If you can't get fans that are, or if you can't get numbers of fans for one thing, and if you don't have enthusiastic fans for another thing, your product doesn't look good. Ron realized this was another big problem. So basically, he came down to the realization that I got to get a new TV deal. So he worked and worked and worked for 6 months, and he had to listen to Big Jim Hess do commentary for 6 months. And Ron Fuller didn't know if any of the other TV stations wanted a wrestling program on their station because some stations in those days didn't want a carnival or hokey product like that on their station. So Ron had to work for 6 months at securing a new deal. When he finally does secure a new deal on the bigger station in Knoxville. He goes back to his original TV station, schedules a meeting, sits down with the station heads, and tells them, "Hey, I'm going to be leaving your station. I've got a new thing. I don't want Hess. I don't want you guys anymore. Switching to a new station." And they said, "Well, that's funny that you should say that because we wanted this meeting today because we were going to tell you you and your show are fired off of our network. So funny the timing and the way things happen. On the same day that he was going to get fired, he got to announce that he was on a new station with a much wider signal reach, a signal that reached out to surrounding towns and communities of a proper size where he could start expansion, start looking at running spot shows in those smaller towns, and then getting his talent out there and getting some more income to a small company that really, really needed that startup money.
For sure. And we'll talk a little bit about that more in a second. Hello, Brett Martinez joining us up
Brett.
in the house. Welcome back, Brett. Haven't seen you for a while. Been missing you, my friend. Thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah.
We got Andre C up in the house. Just got off of Marvel
Andre.
Talk about 40 minutes ago with Ed talking about Marvel's Punisher One Last Kill. You can go back and check out that replay once you're done hanging with us here tonight. He says hello to Papa Smokes in particular. And Bobby as an afterthought. But love you too, Andre. But yes, you're talking about the move to the other television. It wasn't the only issues that he ever had with the television tapings either, though, because there was a lot of problems with crowd control. A lot of the times when the people would get upset with the heels, security had trouble with controlling the crowds, even during those TV tapings, which became a difficult problem for them. But on the plus side, one of the things you got to respect about Ron is he didn't believe about giving the big matches away on television. His television was very, this is a squash match. This is to put the stars over. This is so you understand who are my top guys. And then it was a lot of promos, a lot of talking at the desk and building those matches up and everything like that. He didn't want to give that stuff away until it was time to give it away. He wanted those matches to mean something when they got to the big show. And that is a massively respectful way of handling your business when it comes down to running. I know it can't happen the same with the way television moves nowadays and stuff like that, but going back to that time, being able to hold on to those big money matchups for a big show like at the Coliseum was very, very much a tribute to the success of what Ron did for Southeastern.
Yeah, very much so. And Ron for sure learned the TV business from his dad, Buddy Fuller, and the general rules of running a successful wrestling company from his grandpa Roy Welch, who certainly knew how to do that. There were a couple of other tasks and problems that Ron had in starting this company as well. One, or I should say, goals that he had too. He wanted to start running the large Coliseum in Knoxville. They were running at a smaller venue, the Chilhowie Park, which was a good outdoor venue and all that, but it was subject to inclement weather sometimes. There were other problems with having an outdoor venue. He wanted the large Coliseum in Knoxville. That was a goal. There was another thing about East Tennessee wrestling at that time is that for the years before that, and we talked about Whitey Caldwell, in the 20 years beforehand, the wrestling products that had been shown in the Knoxville area were not the kind of wrestling that Ron Fuller wanted to show on his TV and in his company. The previous wrestling kind of style that had been shown around there was very blood and guts. I guess what we would call nowadays more of a hardcore style. There were all kinds of there was blood and guts and grudge matches and weapons and foreign objects and chairs and all that. And we'll talk about some stories in a little bit to come. But Munson, I know that you were tickled by some of the old stories about Ron Wright and the way he
Yes.
used his chisel. He had that weapon, that sharpened metal chisel that he brought into the ring. He was always teasing all the other wrestlers in the dressing room beforehand, saying, "You've never tasted my chisel yet. I'm gonna work you with my chisel." And he would be sitting there sharpening the blade-like end to it to a razor sharp point, and then, true to his word, in the match, it wasn't like blading nowadays. Ron Wright would take that sharp chisel to your head and do the blading himself, sometimes causing tremendous damage and huge cuts to other wrestlers' foreheads that would take many, many stitches to close. It was a different time, Munson, and to step in the
Yes.
ring with a guy like Ron Wright, you were really maybe taking your own health into your hands. He loved to use his chisel.
Yeah, I mean, it was a scary thought, a guy like that. There's a lot of great stories of the heel work that happened in this territory as well, too.
Oh,
Like even from Ron
so
Fuller
much.
himself talking about the time when he beat the NWA's world heavyweight champion, but he had done it while using his gimmick, and he tucks his gimmick up underneath of his armpit to hide it from the referee. And he's thinking to himself, as soon as I get that NWA championship on my hand, there's nothing he can do. It's all over from there. I am the NWA world champion. So the referee hands him the belt and lifts with the right arm as he's keeping the left one down. And I forget who he says it is, jumps in the ring with him and comes up and pulls up his left arm to cheer with him. Gimmick falls right down into the ring in front of the referee. Referee reverses the decision. No championship for Ron Fuller. That is another great story that I love listening to.
Very much so, and that was another one of Ron's challenges starting up Southeastern Continental Wrestling, was to join the NWA, to get that membership in that group of wrestling promoters, so that he could get championship matches from the touring NWA World Champion at that time in the early days, Jack Briscoe, but later to be Harley Race and Ric Flair and some of the other vaunted names that we know from this time. But yeah, joining the NWA was paramount in importance to Ron Fuller, because it also would set your promotion aside from the other outlaw promotions in the area as being the big time, the big league of professional wrestling. the one that was affiliated with the World Heavyweight Champion and all the big stars that the fans have come to know. And Ron had worked as a wrestler in his younger days in St. Louis for Sam Muchnick, who was, of course, the NWA president for over 20 years, one of the most respected wrestling promoters of all time. And Ron had done very well in St. Louis, working at the Kiel Auditorium for Sam Muchnick. So he had that contact as well, not only with Buddy Fuller, Roy Welch, Eddie Graham, but Sam Muchnick as well. So now you've got some friends in high places. And when the NWA Board of Governors comes to meet, you're going to get taken seriously as a new promotion to gain membership into the National Wrestling Alliance. That's just what Ron did. A huge step to legitimizing Continental Wrestling by being able to bring the NWA champion to town and have World Heavyweight Championship matches in Knoxville.
Yeah, and talking about like some of the people that ran the area, obviously Harley Race made multiple appearances. Andre the Giant was another big name that came in and worked for Ron as well too. But outside of that, more regularly, aside from Ron himself, you had people like the Mongolian Stomper was a regular there. Bob Armstrong, Austin Idol, Jimmy Golden, his brother Robert Fuller, just to name a few at least anyway that really fleshed this whole thing out. You had that Ron Fuller, Bob Armstrong feud that went on for a long time, you know, Armstrong and the Mongolian Stopper as well too. I mean, and then you had Austin Idol who came in and he was cutting those promos. He was really, you know, starting to stand out as a star in the area as well too. So there was quite a list of who's who of professional wrestlers working on a regular basis for Ron in the area.
And that's what membership in the National Wrestling Alliance could do for a company, is because now you go from leaning on local talent, which is probably popular amongst the local fans, but you have to be able to bring in that star power. And that's what Ron needed at that time. So membership in the National Wrestling Alliance would bring in the big names. The guys would start putting Knoxville on their tour so that when they came worked Memphis, they would pop up and work Knoxville as well on their tour around, and then you could really get some star power, get some more fans, get some butts in some seats, and start making that money that you need so much when you're starting a wrestling company. One of the things I really liked about that Ron talks about in the Studcast is I was first listening to this in 2018, 2019, Bobby, when we were first kind of getting the ideas to start Prairie Pro Wrestling up here in Saskatoon. And I took a lot of the Tennessee Studs ideas to heart, because he gives a list in one of his podcasts about the 10 components required to have a successful wrestling company. I'll just go through these quickly, but you know that in some of the early meetings for Prairie Pro Wrestling, I was keeping these tenets close to my heart because they're old school and they've been proven to work through the lineage of wrestling companies. Number one, got to have a strong top babyface to make that emotional connection with the fans. Number two, a major heel faction to build babyface heat. Number three, you got to have good TV. Number four, you got to have a consolidated title structure. Not only a main heavyweight title in your company, but tag titles and possibly a subordinate or a lightweight title as well. A defined and protected territory, which means that you've got your towns and nobody else can run there, keeping the outlaw competition away. You need grassroots marketing and advanced promotion that you talked about, some of those handbills and billboards and presence on TV and radio back in those days. You've got to have clear in-ring hierarchy so that there's a logic to wins and losses, and you're leading the fans into that logic of who are the top stars and who aren't they. Number eight, you need strong long-term booking. So you need a booker that is experienced and that can play the long game, isn't just hot-shotting show to show. You need a plan for all your wrestlers for the long term, flexibility in booking. Number nine, high production television elements. This this uh, this excellence in production will make your product look like a polished product. Will set it apart from the lower hierarchy wrestling companies, the outlaw companies. Will make it look like a major league product. And the number 10, financial capital and transparency. Of course, you need money in order to make money. And that transparency has got to be that your talent knows, has some idea how much your gates are, how much they're being paid, that they know they're being paid fairly. That way you can hold on to the talent that you have. So these 10 tenets, very, very crucial to the running of a successful wrestling product and company. Now, the business has changed in the years in between a little bit, but still these 10 commandments, so to speak, still hold up to this day.
Yeah, very much so. As you're going through them there, Pop Smokes, and I'm just thinking in relation to Prairie Pro and the way it's been built and everything, and those conversations in the early days as well too, that we were both a part of. And yeah, we have kept strong as strongly to those as you can with a modern professional wrestling company, and that I think is a part of the strength of Prairie Pro Wrestling in Saskatoon. But not to sway away from it again, we're getting close to the top of the hour, Papa Spoke. So I know we want to talk about how things kind of came to an end for Ron a little bit. But before that, was there any other pieces that you wanted to mention before we get to the end of Southeastern?
No, we can talk about the way that the wrestling business was changing in the late 70s and 80s. We all know the story of Vince McMahon going national with his cable deal that showed his product all across the nation, put WWF at that time in every home that had a television. So this severely weakened the structure of the territory system. Now people had a product that they could watch every week without going out to the live shows. They could see the big city talent from up in New York, and this really just was the beginning of the end for all the territories. All these territories that we've covered on our show were affected by national expansion of the WWF in the early 80s. Southeastern Continental was no exception to that. There were other factors as well. There were some groups of talent that thought they were being mistreated and underpaid by Southeastern. They formed a bit of a mutiny and were going to try and blackmail Ron Fuller. They had made this video. This is Bob Roop and Ronnie Garvin and a few other wrestlers. They had made a video that explained the worked nature of pro wrestling in the business, and we're going to release this to the television stations, which would, of course, greatly damage Ron Fuller's product. Fuller ending up settling out of court in this whole schmozzle with the other guys. Ron Fuller ends up paying outside of court in order to not have kayfabe broken. Wasn't the business different in these days, Munson? You would do anything to keep the sense of kayfabe that would keep your business alive. But eventually, Ron Fuller sells, and there were a number of ways in which the company changed. It merged with Gulf Coast Wrestling down in Florida, and a whole lot of business deals came and went and occurred during this. But Ron Fuller eventually selling the company and moving on to other ventures. He had a company called USA Wrestling, but Ron Fuller was a businessman by this time. He eventually ended up buying a basketball team. He ended up buying a hockey team, and he went on in his ventures after wrestling as well. But Southeastern Continental, now a footnote in the history of the wrestling business.
Yeah, and after doing the studying for this, listening to the Studcast, I have now become a very big fan of Ron Fuller, not just for his ring work, but respectively for his business. working as well too. What a great guy. I really highly recommend anyone who's listened in today to go check out the Studcast if you want a more in-depth storytelling from the man himself, Ron Fuller. It's an excellent show, deserves way more love than it's ever received, but definitely something. If you're interested in what we explained to you here on Trip Through the Territories, you want to go for the deep dive, and it's there for you. But as mentioned, Bob Smokes, we are close to the top of the hour, so we're going to go put that beautiful ticker of yours up on the screen. We're going to ask you to let the people know where they can find you, what you got coming up.
All right, everybody. I can always be found on Thursday evenings here on OLE Podcasts and the Video Bros Network, on Ring Respect Radio, the very podcast you're watching right now. Other than that, I can be found on Elon Musk's Free Speech Wonderland, known as X. I am at smokes_papa, and on Twitch, allegedly at least, at papa_smokes_.
And unfortunately for Astrid, she joined late. But, here's the beauty of, of YouTube, Astrid. You can always rewind if you really are interested in finding out more about Southeastern Championship Wrestling. As for myself, Bobby Munson, my ticker's up on the screen. That's where you're going to be able to find me if you want to find more of my content. Tune in this Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time as I am joined by Andre C. as we talk about everything that happened in the week of sports, or at least the week of sports that we paid attention to close enough. We talk more about those NHL predictions, how the playoffs are going, all sorts of great stuff going on in the world of sports. Where you can find myself, Papa Smokes, as well too, is on Prairie Pro Wrestling's YouTube channel. Every single Saturday afternoon, a new match from our vaults come out. I believe this weekend we've got Barack Garani taking on Rich King, taped at the Cold Hearted event back in February. You're not going to want to miss out on that. Go check us out on Prairie Pro Wrestling's YouTube channel. And you can also check out this show and other great shows across OLE Podcast. We're on all social media as well as YouTube and Twitch. We are partnered on Twitch and YouTube. On Twitch, that means if you give us subs, that helps us out. If you're a Prime member, you can give us a Prime sub. You can give us subs on there. But hey, even a follow and just watching along does a lot as well. Here on the YouTube side, watching along as much of the content as you can, that does great for us. But if you can, watching on replay, leave a comment in the comment section below, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell. And hey, if you are watching at least 24 hours after this stream happened, and you got a mobile phone just like this one, you pick it on up, you slide on over to the side, you got these things, they're called hype points. Yeah, hype points. You get like 3 of those per week that you can give to your favorite content creators. And we know a lot of that love has been shared here on Ring Respect Radio. Twice Pop Smokes and I have broken onto the top 100 hype charts for Canada, and we want to get all the way to the top one of these days, and with your help we can do it. So share those hype points here with us and with all of your great your favorites here on OLE Podcast. Thank you to all our live viewers as well too, like the Mangler, like Astrid, like Andre, like Brett, Blair over at Graymaker, and Bass. You guys are great keeping the active chat alive here on a Thursday night. We appreciate every single one of you, and we're looking forward to getting back to some more indie conversations next Thursday on the channel. Stay tuned for that, and we will see you soon, everybody.